So on Monday, we learned how to use JavaScript and how to hook it up to our HTML and our CSS and our web pages to be able to start manipulating what we see on the screen. We learned that HTML is merely instructions for our browser to build what we call the DOM. And the DOM is really what's live. The DOM is what we're seeing on our screen at all times. HTML is read once, and then it's disregarded. Once we have the DOM and DOM's loaded, we are then able to use JavaScript and special DOM methods and properties to manipulate what we see on the screen. And so we learned how to do that. We learned how to select elements. Someone, just off the top of your head, give me a way to select an element. I want to see all. I say there are 5 of them, but really there are 4. But I say there are 5. Query selector all. Get element by ID. Ooh, get element by tag. That's one we didn't go over, but that one exists. I see get element by class, but it's not quite. It's get elements by class name. Okay. And those of you that said get element by class or get element by class name or get elements by ID, etc., you're going to make these mistakes all the time. I do it all the time, right? I'm like, why isn't the selector working? Oh, because I put get element by class name instead of get elements. Or I didn't capitalize the N in name or something like that. So this point on, from this point forward, it's going to be really pivotal that you go and research all of this stuff and be like, okay, I forgot kind of what style query selector takes. Oh, it takes a CSS query selection string. Oh, I forgot, like, why isn't get element by class name working? Oh, because it's get elements by class name. Or why isn't it giving me back the element? Oh, because it gives me back an HTML collection or a node list instead. So really start to go out and read the docs. Many of you got to the stretch goal on last night. The stretch goal is hard. It's notoriously hard, and it's supposed to be hard. From this point forward, if you haven't been challenged by stretch goals in the past, if you do get to them, fair warning, if you don't get to the stretch goal, that is 100% okay. They're meant to challenge you further, right? If you got the main assignment finished. But the stretch goal last night is notoriously hard, and they're all going to be hard from now on. And they're really meant to challenge you to go off and figure things out on your own. Go out and read MDN, go out and look up, go Google search, go figure out what's going on, what the pieces you need to use, how to use them. So it teaches you to be an autonomous programmer. It teaches you to problem solve, and it teaches you to read documentation. That's what the goal of those are. So stretch goals are not ever intended to be completed. Some of you will complete them every now and then, but they're really not intended to be fully completed. So those of you that did complete them, congratulations, but they're just really meant to challenge, right? So going back to DOM manipulation. We know how to select elements on the screen. We know how to select, or elements in the DOM, excuse me. And then once we have these elements, we learned a few different ways to manipulate them, to change what they look like, the data that they're given. We can change attributes, we can change the styling, we can change the position, we can change a lot of things. And that's all good and great. And, I think many of you asked on Monday, and some of you might be thinking, like, why don't we just write it in the HTML or in the CSS? Why do we use JavaScript to write it? Why are we going in after we've written the HTML and CSS and using JavaScript to do something more difficult that can be just written in the HTML or the CSS, right? That's what tonight's all about. Tonight is about taking that functionality and applying it to web pages in a dynamic fashion. Taking that functionality and manipulating the DOM based on user input, based on user interaction, based on something that comes back from our server, some data that comes back from our server, based on anything. We can, you know, if you ever wondered why your photo shows up in the right-hand top bar of Facebook rather than just a generic photo, that's what this is all about, okay? And why drop-downs happen when you click on buttons. Why, you know, input fields are highlighted when you start typing and things like that. This is going to be where it all kind of comes together is tonight. And we're going to talk about events and event listeners. So every interaction a user has with the site is known as an event. A click, moving the mouse, scrolling, pressing keys, hovering over items, in and out, typing. These are all events, right? And our browser is listening for every single event that happens on the screen. And we can set a specific rules to do things when certain events happen, okay? That's what's known as an event listener. So we are going to go over some events tonight, and let me just pop this out. I'm going to share my screen now. Let me know if you see CodePen. See CodePen here? I'm going to stop my video, close that to the side. You guys all see CodePen? Cool. Let's go in here. Let's go to MDN, and let's just go events. Let's see what events got for us. Event reference. All right. These are all of the events that we can listen for. These are probably the more important, the keyboard and mouse events. But these are all events that we are listening for, that the browser is listening for at any given time. And we can capture those and do things based on those events. So, like I said, we are going to be going over a couple of them, the most kind of important, well-known events. But it's going to be up to you to look into the documentation and see what's available to you. You might be working on something, you're like, man, it'd be really cool if, you know, the third time a user clicked on this button, it did something else. Like, well, you can do that, or a double click, etc. So yeah, it's worth looking at the documentation. Levi, great question. Are these events specific to desktop or also tablet events and phone events? Most of the mouse, really the only events that, no, I'm not going to say the only. The most important event to mouse and or to a tablet and a phone are finger taps, and that's considered as a mouse click. And so there's still hover, well, there's not really hover on the phone or a tablet. There's focus on the phone and a tablet. But focus and mouse and finger taps or mouse clicks are what phone and tablets are going to do for the most part. So that's also something when developing your UI and UX, you have to keep in mind that a phone user is not going to be able to hover over something. But let's get to it. I'm going to create, let's just go button. We're going to call that a button. We are going to give it some CSS. So width, 100 pixels. Height, let's do 150. Height, 50. Color, what's the color? CSS color, first one wins. First one that I see wins. Purple, got it. Oh, where's our button at? Width, height. Oh, duh. Background color. There we go. Give me a border color. Aqua, there we go. Aqua. Ooh, I'm gonna switch those around. Aqua and purple. Oh, that's much, much better. Since it's a button, I want to say cursor is pointer. Just give it some quick CSS here. And then I'm going to do display of flex, justify, center, align, center. Okay, and then let's go with me. Cool. All right, looks like a button to me, right? Oh, but when I click it, nothing happens, right? So let's talk about events here. There are two types of events, okay? First type of event happens on your HTML. You can write on click equals and give it something, right? If you do this, this is going to expect there to be a JavaScript function here that goes back to this. It's going to be function. Let's go click handler. Let's just do this real quick. Console log in the HTML. Okay, so in here, I'm going to reference click handler. And I'll be quite honest, I am not going to get this right the first time because you will never use this, or you shouldn't. Let's see if it's. It might have to be called. That's why. There it goes. You have to call it. Okay. This, and there are tons of these, right? This is bad practice right now. We're going to learn a much, much better way of doing this. But just know that this exists. We can add like a click event, right? So the browser understands that this element understands that when it gets clicked, it's going to call this JavaScript function. And there it is in the HTML, right? Calling it. So that's what an event is. Let's go and do this the JavaScript way. Let's go and say, how should I select this element? By ID, well, there's no ID on it right now. I can select it anyway. I can do class name, sure. Let's do class name. I am going to do query selector because I'm only selecting one. Document dot query selector. And if I'm going to select the first class name of this, what does my query selector string need to be? Yep, there you go. Dot button. Remember, query selector is always going to take a CSS style selector. If you just type button in there, it is going to look for the button element, right? If you have to say the class is dot button. Conversely, if I said get elements by class name, and I said dot button, that would not work, right? We need to give it the actual name of the class. Okay, so I just say button for the class name. Dimitri, the $ selector is a jQuery construct. We are not working with jQuery here. So it's essentially the same concept, the $. But going back here, we now have our button, right? Let's console log button. It's not going to do it very well for us because code pin. Oh yeah, there it is. Cool. Look at that. We console log the button and it gave us back the string representation of the button, which is not what we want, but we have it now. Okay? It's a good idea to just console log the element if you're selecting, just to make sure you got the right element. So if you're selecting elements, especially right now at this stage in your JavaScript and DOM manipulation life, console log it. Make sure you got it. Make sure you got the right thing. If you open up your actual, oh, no, I don't want that. If you open up your actual console, you can hover and it'll highlight the element that it is, right? That's good practice to do. Let's see. All right, so we now have our button. Let's talk about the first JavaScript way of doing it. We can say button.onClick equals click handler. All right, and I still don't know if this is going to work. Let's see if it works. All right, now it works. When I say button.onClick right here, this onClick is essentially, if we remember back to our attributes, we can say dot attribute, right? And so when we say dot attribute, we are essentially adding it to the HTML. So we're doing this when we say dot onClick, okay? And that is bad practice for us. Someone asked why it was bad practice. It's unsafe. It allows our HTML and our JavaScript open to security concerns. And it's just kind of an old way of doing things where we want to break our, well, there's a time when we wanted to break all of our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into separate files and then React kind of put them all back to one. But it made up for it in other ways. So we are not going to use the attribute way of giving it a click handler. So it still works. I click on it. I'm still getting that in the HTML, right? Oh, now we're going to say, that's still in the click handler. So, yeah, you guys jumped the gun. Just calm down. So instead of doing it this way, button.onClick, we're going to use a DOM method, and it's called add event listener. An add event listener takes two arguments. The first argument is the event that we are listening for. Once again, you can come in here and find, these are all the official names of the event. Scroll. You can listen for every single time someone scrolls within that event or within that element. Submit is a form event. It's going down, key down. So anytime someone presses a key, anytime someone depresses a key, or key up, anytime a key is released. And then we have our mouse events here, and click is right there. So we can use that as an official event, all right? So I say click. So that's the first argument. The second argument for our add event listener is going to be a callback function. So it is going to be the function that is called whenever that click is recorded, okay? So we can do this just like this, and then it'll work, right? There we go. Now we can change this to in the JavaScript /DOM. There we go. Okay. Now it clicks. Now we are able to do something, right? We can also write our own callback function right in line here, right? Console log in the inline callback function. All right, now we're console logging in the inline callback function. We could do this for all kinds of events. Let's do mouse over or mouse enter. That's what it is. Mouse enter. That's an official event. Callback function, enter mouse. Oh, look at that. I'm just hovering over it. I'm not even clicking it. I'm just hovering over it. And we can go mouse leave. And just a reminder, these strings are official events. You can go get them on the NDN website in the events. And we can say, leave mouse, I'll leave. And look, I'm gonna enter. Nothing's gonna happen. I mess around in here, do things, and as soon as I leave, it now calls the callback function. We'll get to that in a moment, Becky. There's a big reason I am using the function keyword syntax here. Can anyone tell me why I am using the function keyword syntax and not an arrow function here? Just to hark back to last week's stuff. Yeah, it's the use of this. We can use this in the function. Let's come down here and check it out. And what do you think this is going to reference in this? The button itself, right? Why is that referencing the button itself? It's a little tricky, yeah, because it's the left of the dot. Whatever the item to the left of the dot is, right? If I used an arrow function here, what do you think is going to be console logged? And this is probably not going to show up. I want to see more guesses on here. Is it the button? Is it the DOM? Is it the window? What is it? The console? Document? Error? I love it. Keep them coming. Just guesses. Guess at it. Whatever's on your mind. Whatever you think it is. Doc, object, window, 42. I love it. Undefined. Add event listener. Yes. Pizza Batman. Pizza Batman. I knew it wasn't going to do it. But it's the window. The big reveal. Why is it the window? Who's got a guess of why it's the window if I use the arrow function? Closure, not assigned correctly, anonymous function, default binding, window binding, yep. So the arrow function automatically binds this. And it automatically binds this to whatever calls this. And add event listener is actually calling it. And add event listener actually lives on the window. So that's just a little bit of JavaScript trivia for you. If you find yourself trying to use this in one of these callback functions and it's console logging window, I would highly recommend staying away from the arrow function here and just using the function keyword. Okay, and this is called an anonymous function. I don't know if we've talked about it yet, but you don't have to give a function a name, especially if you're writing it in line. This is kind of how we do it. This is called an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name. I can't use it anywhere else. This is how you'll see it written quite a bit, and we'll go in a little bit later into what the parameters of this function are, because it does have parameters. Actually, we're going to go into it. Well, let's go. Now let's play with this more. Okay. So console logging is really fun for like a minute, right? We got it to work. We're like, oh, cool, it's working now. This is so much fun. Now let's actually do stuff with it, right? So if we're using function, we know that this keyword is equal to the button itself, right? Because that is left of the dot. That is what it's being bound to. So we're tired of console logging. We don't want to console log anymore. We have at our disposal tons of ways to manipulate our DOM, right? We have tons of ways of doing it. We have a button right here, and we can do button or this, right? Because we've used the regular function syntax. But let's do something with the button now. We no longer want to console log it. Console logging is only good for developers. Only developers see the console anyways. And so let's do something crazy. Let's go button.style. Let's change the style of the button. And if someone give me a CSS color, first one, gets it. Green. Green, red line. Is line color? Well, green was the first one, and I said the first one. So let's go background. How do I write background color in the DOM? Yep. Remember, when we are using something that has a hyphen in it normally in CSS, we need to remove the hyphen and change the case of the second word to uppercase. So let's go background color, green. And this is mouse leave, let's do click. Because click is more likely for a button. And we can do some crazy stuff on click. So, it's in here, I'm gonna click it. Look at that. All of a sudden, our DOM manipulation is being used to manipulate the DOM based on user input and user actions, okay? It does not change back if I click it again. What do you think it's gonna do if I click it again? Let's look at all of our code and figure out what's gonna happen when I click it again. I see nothing, stay green, stay the same, nothing, change to green again. Go through the function again, stay the same, nothing, green again. Yeah, I mean, something's gonna happen, right? A click happened. So the function is going to be run, but it's going to change the background color to green. So I can click it as many times as I want, and each time the background color is changed to green. That's all that's happening. We can't see it, but that's what's happening, right? Now we can do a bunch of crazy stuff in here. So we can go, let's do this. How do we get it to change back? How can we get it to change back? What's the first thing we need to check for? No, we want to do this all on click. Current color if it's green, right? So we need to check for. How do we check for that? If, yeah, let's do an if. And what are we going to see in our if statement here? Boom, Angela's got it. Mike Mitchell's got it. Christopher's got it. Yeah, so we know that style and background color we can assign using the assignment operator, but we can also read what it is, right? It'll also give us back what it is. This is just an object, right? That's all it is. So we can say if background color triple equals, and we're going to use green, we're going to say if it's currently green, then what do we want to do? We can do a couple of things here, and I want to show you why. But let's just change it back to its original color. Right? We just want to, we're going to change it back to its original color. And let's go, if it's green, let's go aqua. Else, code pen does not have my favorite. Else, we're going to change it to green, right? Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions on this code right here? Of why we're doing what we're doing? So essentially in this function, we're going to check to see if button, and we're getting button right here. We could say this, right? But we're getting button. We're going to check to see if the background color is already green. Okay, and if not, if it is, we're going to change it to aqua. If it's not green, we're going to change it to green, okay? Every time this element is clicked, right, we have added an event listener now that's listening for every single click on it. And every time it's clicked, it's going to run this function, okay? Green, aqua, green, aqua. Look at that. That's just based on user interaction, okay? I'm going to try to trip you up a little bit. So if you're really confused by this next thing, it's on purpose. Come on. Let's go. The CSS takes forever. All right. So now we start off with green, right? What do you think is going to happen when I click this? I'm going to turn aqua. Got one question. Aqua, 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 aqua. Oh, yeah. I have aqua. I've got a nothing. I've got it will turn green. Green, aqua. That's majority you see in aqua. Okay. Let's click it. I want to make sure that you can hear my click. Nothing happened. Why didn't anything happen? Anyone have a guess? Well, if it's green, we want it to go aqua, right? Yep, Stefan got it. Because remember what this style is? What is that style? What this style property is on the element. It's an inline style, right? It doesn't read the CSS. It has nothing to do with the CSS. It is an inline style. So you know what happened? What is background color at the beginning? What style, the inline style of background color is nothing, right? It's an empty string. It's an empty string because the DOM does not read the CSS. It has nothing to do with the CSS here. So gotta remember that. That's a tricky one that trips a lot of people up. The style has nothing to do with the CSS. So initially, background color, even if it's green on our CSS, is still, and we can see this. Let's look at it. Look, it's an empty string. Okay. Yeah, click it again and it'll go to aqua. Yep. So let's do this each time, actually. I just want to drive this point home of this style property because it trips a lot of people up. All right, the first time, right? Let's give it a little bit more info. Inline style BG color. All right, clear it. Clear it. Click me. The inline style background color right now is empty, right? Because when we first start off, we did not give it a style with a background color, etc. Right? We didn't do it. Nothing in there. It's empty. When I click it again, what's it going to be? Well, what's going to log? Inline style background color is going to be green, and it's then and only then it'll say like, okay, it's green now. I'm going to change it to aqua. Oh, there it goes. Sorry, it restarted on me. Let's clear it. We'll restart it. And now we're in the right path. Okay. So I'm going to point that out to you. And now look, we have done something, right? Let's do something crazy. many of you, we kind of saw a glimpse into why we use display of none. What's one reason to use display of none? Well, hide something, yeah, but yeah, there you go. Tablets, mobile, hide something on. We've used it in our media queries, right? Our breakpoints. Make things disappear. What if I did something like this? Right? Boom, gone. Pretty cool. And so you can kind of start to see a lot of the power of the the DOM, right? Let's take this a step further. Let's add something on here, and we're going to go div container stuff. Let's give it some CSS. Width of say 300, height of 200. Add some colors already, so let's go to background color of red. The red on this is super harsh. Let's go border of let's go 5 pixel solid line. Oh man, that's a brutal div right there. And we're gonna go margin top of 20 pixels. Yeah, I'm gonna change the red to crimson. Much nicer on the eyes. And I'm gonna change that back to aqua. Let's change this to regular green because there we go. A little Christmassy now. Yeah, the lime and CSS yellow. That's just going to be great for your eyes. All right. So we have 2 containers. We have a button and we have a container, right? How should I select that container? I want to select the container. Okay, we'll use query selector again. You'll find yourself using query selector quite a bit. I'm going to console log it, make sure I got it. CodePen is not the best thing to write JavaScript in. Ugh, sometimes it just doesn't want to do what you want it to do. There we go. All right. So we have our container now. Make sure that we have it. We can hover over it. We've got it. Okay. And it is in our container variable. So we can do something like, let's go container dot add event listener. What event should I listen for? Nothing crazy. Mouse leave. Okay, cool. We'll do mouse leave. All right. So in mouse sleeve, what do we want to do to the container? Let's do something. Well, Jorge, so there's no hover, but it's called mouse enter for JavaScript. Hover for CSS, though. Shrink it. Okay, yeah, let's shrink it. Let's shrink the container dot style dot width is going to equal, let's do 100 pixels. Let's do container dot style dot height equals, what do we have our height at right now? 200, so we just shrunk it by a third. So it's going to be 66.666666 pixels. That's not even a third. That's probably less. All right, and then I saw some inner text. So let's change the inner text to, let's do this. Style.color. We want to change our text color. Let's change it to white because it doesn't show up real well in that background. Okay, so we're gonna do mouse leave, right? Button is not gonna do anything. Oh man, I already did it. Refresh it, come on. Again. I should change it. All right. Sorry for the completely awful demonstration there, but all right. Mouse enter and mouse leave. Boom. We just changed like three styles and inner text of it, right? Pretty cool. We're going to take a quick break. We'll do 5 minutes. We're going to come back and we're going to really get things going on this. All right. So be back at, let's do 54 after, and then we'll get going with it. More stuff with it. All right. All right, everybody come on back. Just reading some comments. So the JavaScript DOM does not have access to the CSS in the way that it has access to the HTML. This is a really high level way to think about it without taking into consideration all the stuff the browser is doing, because the browser is doing some really intense stuff in the background. We do not access the CSS with JavaScript. We don't, we won't, we can't. We may be able to in the future, but we don't right now. So anytime we change the style of anything with JavaScript, we are changing it on, we can consider it changing it on inline styles on the HTML. The browser, what it does is it reads the HTML, it builds the DOM, it puts the DOM on the screen, then it reads the CSS and makes the appropriate changes to the DOM using the CSS, or to what's being appeared on the screen using the CSS. Doesn't change the DOM, just what appears on the screen, okay? So just remember that you can't change the CSS. You can't affect the CSS styling with JavaScript, all right? That's a really high level overview of it, but that's what's going on. All right. Yeah, the browser just reads the CSS and applies the rules to the screen, right? Cool. So we know how to add event listeners to one thing to change it, right? So we can go in and add this mouse leaf to our container right here, and it will change the size, changed it more, right? Eric, that is a rabbit hole that if you want to go down, it's very interesting, but very, very complicated. Okay, so we have our mouse leave. We know that we can enter, and once we leave, that function is going to be run, right? Remember, this is a function that's being called. Why do we have access to the container within that function? Anyone want to explain it to me? Why we have access to container inside of that function? Right? This is a function. This is completely separate from everything else. This function here, it could be written. We can go const container. It means it's a container leave, right? Ooh, these are all good. Because it was called for the event, container is global. That's okay. Because of implicit binding, it's bound. You have selected container using. Yeah, so I think Kendra right now has the best answer for this. Functions have access to variables declared outside of it. Remember, this is a scoping thing. I just wanted to kind of go back and show you why we spend so much time learning about what we call fundamentals to understand how this can even work, right? This function is going out and calling container itself and then affecting it on leave, right? It's all about scoping. It's all about that function scoping, right? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not calling this function? Or putting parentheses on it when I put it in the add event listener. Any other guesses? Why am I just doing it, just putting the name of it there? Yeah, because if I put the, I mean, you can watch it happen on the screen right now. If I put the parentheses right here, the first time that JavaScript read it, it would instantly call it and change it without me doing anything to it. So if I don't put those there, JavaScript knows that it's going to listen for, the browser is going to listen for a mouse leave, and when the mouse leaves, then it's going to call that whatever that variable is. It should be a function. If it's not, you'll get a not a function error. There you go, right? And I don't call it when I first initialize it. Don't call it. Otherwise, it's going to happen like that. And plenty of you will, and it's going to happen, and then just know that that's why it's happening, okay? We're just passing it. Remember, add event listener is going to do something. It's going to listen for an event, and then it's going to call its whatever whatever property is passed into the second argument. It's going to call it like a function. Okay. All right. So we've got some cool stuff going on here. Let's come back to our button. So we can use our button to change our button, right? We can also use our button to change anything else on the screen. We can use this click to change what's in the container. Let's go on button click. Let's just do this. We're gonna, when we click our button, we're gonna make the container disappear, right? So let's go in, our container still has its functionality. Click me, boom, and now it's gone. Our button's still there. We can click it more. We can do the same, that kind of that button background. We can have that toggle for the container now. But yeah, so let's go back and we'll go none again. Gone. Okay, so now we can affect other things on the screen in by adding event listeners to the button, right? How to toggle? Well, we would just have to write our if statements again. So I'm going to do this. Almost made a drastic mistake there. If there's no display, I'm going to say display none. Else. Now let's talk about this, why this is going to work. What am I doing by setting the display to an empty string? Not yet, Jonathan. What am I doing by setting the display to an empty string? Why am I looking for an empty string, and why am I setting it to an empty string here? Because it's empty at first, exactly. And when I set it to an empty string, I think I saw it on here, it just goes back to whatever the CSS was for it, right? Remember, when we add something to style, that's inline styles, and it's just going to go back to like it has no inline style, right? So now look. Woo! Now we can change it. Toggle it. Gone. Back. Gone. Pretty cool stuff. And you're going to be using this a lot next week. This tonight too, but a lot next week. Making a lot of things happen. If I said, wait, if I put flex right here, I'm sorry, Kyle. I'm trying to get a better understanding. Display none is going to remove the element from the display, right? That's going to happen. The reason it's being removed from the display right here is because it's being added to an inline style. It has nothing to do with the CSS we currently have. When I do down here, display equals to an empty string, what this is doing is this is removing that style from our inline style. So then whatever our CSS is going to take precedence. Okay, if that makes sense. All right, let's do this. I'm gonna remove this because I don't like it. We have container still. And let's come into our container here. And let's do this. We're going to go H2. Oh. And then let's go span. Let's do a big fat X up there. Let's see. Okay. Seeing if I had any more comments on here. So I'm going to change this display to flex. Go align items center. Nope. But we are going to justify content space between. All right. Let me read some of these comments real quick before we get started. Kyle, no. Remember that our JavaScript is not affecting our CSS at all. Okay. So the reason I put display is equal to an empty string, and look, we can do this. Let's do this again. Let's go console log container.style. So I want to make sure that this is clear to everyone. All right. Let's actually just do container so we can see what it looks like. All right. Console. We've got our container right there. And I don't want that in here. Let's clear that. I'm just going to do this so CodePen will restart for me. All right, I'm going to click it, and it's going to show us what our element actually looks like. We have the, this is before, I'm going to do it after. So this is going to be after everything takes place. This is what it looks like after this has been applied. Look at that right there. Style equals display of none. Okay? That's what's happening when we set the style using JavaScript. It adds this essentially to our element. It adds the style tags to our element. Okay? So then when I click it again, now it's going to say style is empty, doesn't have any styles. Cool, so it's just going to read the CSS. That's what's happening there. All right? Hopefully that cleared it up for everyone. What's actually going on here? We're removing the styles, right? Is essentially what we're doing there. Okay? Any other questions? All right, I'm going to clear this. I'm going to continue on, and I'll read your questions as they come in. So I want to select this specific span. How should I do that? How should I select that specific span, that X? Query selector, and how should I do it? It's not in the button, right? It's in the container. I could do get element by tag name, but what is get element by tag name going to do? It's going to get all the elements with that tag name. I don't want to. I just want that specific span. Okay? And I think, yep, Christopher, Eric, Griffin, you guys, and I thought I saw another one on there as well. You guys all got it. All right, we're just going to use and this time we're going to do container, close. Okay? And we're going to do container and span. This is a CSS selector, right? We are in fact using that selector right there. It's the same exact CSS selector that we're using here. That's what query selector is so awesome for. Is I can just put specificity rules in here, and it's going to go and find the first, right? It's only going to take one because it's query selector and not query selector all. And it's going to find the first element that matches this query. Okay? So yeah, so there we go. And so now we have access to what I'm going to call is our close button right here. Let's add a cursor to it so that people know that it's clickable. Now everyone knows it's clickable, right? When I click on it, it's going to do something. All right. I'm going to add an event listener. I'm going to add the click event on it. Okay, so Eric, yes, I could. Ooh, no, that wouldn't. Yeah, that would be the second child. Yep. But if I want to very specifically grab that span, right, I'm going to do it like that. So there's a number of different ways you could have done it. You could have used the container and then got the children and then got the second child. All right, so we want this button here, this close button, to close the container it's in, right? How do we do that? How do we close the container, so make it disappear with our current code here? Set display of none. Yep, we're going to do that. On what? It's kind of a trick question. But I see many of you typing container dot, but we don't have container anymore, right? We only have that close button now. So we could do something like container close dot parent element. It's just parent element. Dot style dot display equals none. That would work. Yeah. Let's check it out. Boom. Totally worked. All right, that's one way of doing it. I want to introduce you to something new in here, and it's our first and only parameter that's given to us in our event listener callback. Okay. Oh, parent node. Parent element works too, huh? Normally it's parent node. Let's check it out. Parent element. And versus parent node. Oh, I like that. Let's look at it. Parent element versus parent node. Let's see what Stack Overflow has to say. It looks like it's a different DOM implementation. So both of them should work with Chrome. All right. Parent node is probably the newer version. It probably has more DOM functionality, just like HTML collections have less functionality than node lists, right? So this is one way of doing it. Let's talk about the one argument we are allowed to put in to our callback here. Anyone know what that argument is? It's named very uniquely. Yeah, the event. Yep. This is called the event object. Okay. So this is called the event object. So let's do this. Let's console log the event. Oh. Yeah, I know. So this is our event right here, okay? This is going to give us all of the data about the event that just took place. That click has so much data associated with it. Let's look. Where our mouse was in reference to the screen. So it was 299 pixels to the right and 106 pixels from the top. Okay. Oh, we'll talk about bubbles in a moment. You know, there's a ton of stuff in here. All of this data, where the mouse was. You can use this to be very specific. You know, you can create JavaScript games based on events and the client X and client Y, the mouse location, the offsets, and all that stuff. Where on the page it was. This is in the client it was, right? Tons of data in here about everything about the type, right? So we can say what type was it? What was the click? Okay. And what element was it on? It gives us the actual element right here. 2 element, the target. And the target's really important. And that's what we're going to go with. Okay. Sounds like the snake game. Absolutely, you can use the snake game. Yeah, Kyle, it makes you really realize how much data can be collected about just moving your mouse around the screen, right? Data can be collected about every little thing you do. It can say like, oh, if they were hovering over this button, but they went to this other button, we can figure that out. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff in here that you can go through and research on your own. We're going to talk right now about the target. Okay, so the target is probably the most important part of our, or most used, is the target. And the target, if we open it up, is going to be, oh, it doesn't even, nope, didn't give it to us anymore. All right, let's go find it. Oh, let's just do it then again. It'll give us more. Just like window gives us more data about document, the event will give us more data about target. Okay, let's go down, find the target, open that up, and now we have all of this data about that span, right? What is all this data? What is all of this data? What does it look like to you? Look familiar? Yeah, it's just DOM. It's just this. That's the element. It's the DOM element, right? And we have access to all of this stuff, right? And so, yeah, look, parent element and parent node right in there. Okay. So most of the time, well, just know that it exists, and we can do event target. Event dot type is going to be the click. All right, so let's do this. I want to do this now because it'll make it more important why we're doing this. All right, why isn't that appearing on the screen? Because I have some stuff going on here. All right, so what we're going to do in here is we're going to do a query selector all. What does query selector all give us back? It's going to give us back a node list with both of these containers in it, right? And this is just bugging me, so I'm going to go in and padding left 10 pixels. Didn't do border box, so that's why it grew. All right. So query selector all is going to give us an array with the elements on it, all the elements. Okay. So let's do this. Let's go close handler. You'll see things called handlers all the time. So handler, just to say, it's just container close handler is going to equal a function. So in a console logger event contain target. Let's do this. Yeah. Okay, so we have this close handler, and now we can go through and we can add event handlers to each of our container closed buttons. How should I do this? I can do it a couple of different ways. Remember, this is a node list, so I can do it one very specific way. I want to add a click handler to every single container closed button that I have. It could be 1, it could be 30, right? Yep, we're going to use for each. Container close buttons dot for each. We know that for each we are allowed to have we use on node lists and not HTML collections. Remember that for each is not available. You have to use a regular for loop right here. I'm going to use an arrow function because I don't need access to this. And we can say item dot. Well, let's go close button. Dot add event listener. We're going to give it a click handler. Stefan, why not make it an array? We don't need to right now, right? Node list has access to for each, so we don't need to make it an array. We could have done array.from on container closed buttons if we wanted. And let's give it our container close handler. All right. Give me 1 second. I need to go get my phone charger because my Slack is about to die. So hold on one moment. Study this code. All right. Okay. So let's look at this now. Okay. So we have 2 buttons here that we've gotten, right? Two buttons that we have here. We are getting those with query selector all. Query selector all is going to give us a node list back with those 2 elements in it. Okay. We are going to run a for each over that node list, and on each of those items, close button, we're going to add an event listener, giving it this container close handler into it. And it's going to console log the event target. That's all it's going to do. Then let's check it out. See if it works. Ooh. Console clear. All right. Let's click it. See what happens. We have our span. And we have our other span. And we can even open it up. And we can see that it's actually each individual span. Right? Each one. And so now look. Now we're using the same click handler for multiple items in here. Okay. And we just have an event target. Right? So does not work on HTML collections. For each does not work on HTML collections. It only works on node lists and arrays, and maybe collection lists. All right. So if we did not have this event target, let's just say we're going back to our old school ways of doing things. How could we make sure that each of these had access to its own container? Any ideas? There's a couple of different ways now we can do it, but we could use this, right? We can say this dot parent node, and this is new. We never used to be able to use this in here. This would always refer to the window no matter what. And that was given to us with jQuery, which the DOM brought in. So yeah, we could use this dot parent node. I'm certain we could. Style dot display equals none. Yep, it worked. Or we can use now the event. And oftentimes you'll see the event object just as E or event. Okay? So let's go event dot target dot parent node dot style dot display equals no. Parent knows. That's why I have spell check on my VS Code. And now let's go. And they're both working now. Exactly the way we wanted them to. Why target? Great question. So, and this is important as you get deeper into events, something we'll talk about in just a moment, which is bubbling and propagation. Yeah, I got it. So let's click on it. This first one, oh, I don't want to do the event. I don't want to do it none yet anymore. I'm just going to console log the event object for each of these. Okay, so these are two separate events that happened, and we can see where our mouse was on them, etc. All right. So we have all of our event info, and we can go to target. So target is a property on the event object that contains our actual. And if you look over on the left, you'll see that it's being highlighted. Okay. You'll see where it's being highlighted there. So this target is actually that whole DOM element there. All right. And then we can go in and say the parent node of that and the display is none. Okay. So this allows us to write one handler for an event and have it affect multiple items. Have it work for multiple items. All right. Any questions on this right now? There's a lot of information in that event. There's multiple ways of getting it, but the event has the information about the actual event itself. And we can do something like, we could just say container close handler and say like, if event dot type equals click, then do one thing, else if event dot type equals mouse over, enter, do another thing. Stefan, I don't know the compatibility, the browser compatibility of using this in a click handler or an event handler. I'd have to look it up, to be quite honest. I've always used the event with vanilla JavaScript DOM manipulation. So it's cool that we can use this now, but this really only gives us access to the target, right? So we have the event target. Essentially, this equals event.target. And if you use a arrow function here, this equals the window. It's sent, there you go. How does this.parent node know about the span? This is the span. Parent node, great question. Remember, so that span is the element, right? It's the event target. It's the this. Parent element or parent node is its parent. So that would be this div. Okay, remember the tree structure of the DOM. So the root is the parent, and then it goes down, and these are both children. So if I select a container here and I ask for the children, I would get an array with these two items in it. Okay, so it's the container itself. All right, let's get some more questions on it. Yeah, if you click right here, it still works. But that's just due to the fact that it's a span and it's flex. Absolutely, Jennifer. Absolutely. You want to be able to just look at your HTML and see what are child elements and what are parent elements. And if there is a child element in this H2, you would want to be able to see that very easily as well. It makes working with it and manipulating it and writing all this stuff much, much easier. Absolutely. All right. I want to do one last thing, and then we'll let you on to work on the assignment. So I have this event that's happening on all of these buttons. Let's do this. I'm going to go grab all of the containers. Right? This is all the containers. And I'm going to get rid of this button. I'm just going to. We're not worried about the button anymore. We're just worried about these containers now. Okay? So I'm grabbing all of the containers here. All right, I'm putting this close button handler on the close buttons. And then I want a when the container itself is clicked, I want it to be aqua. And let's go, let's do this. Containers dot for each container If you only have one argument, you don't have to put the parentheses around it. That's a new little shorthand. And let's go container.add event listener. Let's go with that click. And let's just give it our container click handler. All right. Any questions? Where did I say container? What line? All right. Any questions about line 21 through 27? Jorge, you do need curly braces. I'll go over that in a moment why you wouldn't. But any questions about 21 through 27? All right, you do need curly braces. If you don't have curly braces, the only time you can do it without curly braces is if it's a single line and then it's an implied return statement. Put your curly braces on until you get really, really, really good at JavaScript. And then you can know when to leave them off. But it's an implied return statement, so that's why you would leave them off. Then you can only do it on a single line. Okay. So what is going to happen when I click this container? Oh, why didn't it do that? Huh? Oh. Event.target, background color aqua. Why my container not? I got something wrong going on with it. All right, let's make sure we got our containers. Query selector all. All right, that should work. Let's just console log our containers. All right, we're going to do some live debugging right now. Node list. We have our containers, right? Okay, they're both in there. So now that we know that we have them, let's go and see what our event is targeting to. Event target div container. Oh, ha! Now I get it. There we go. Oh man, you guys are on it. You were already on it because I didn't put a style in. Okay. There we go. Now it's working. Those are some, you're all going to mess it up too at some point. Cool. All right. Let's go in and do this. Let's, instead of parent node, let's just say the individual item on our close handler, okay? So I want it so that when we click on these X's, the X's themselves disappear. Or let's actually do it inside of a little box. Div dot close box, close. All right, this will make way more sense. If this makes sense. We're going to put these X's in these little close boxes. We're going to come in here and we're going to say close the box. All right, should still work now. Okay, let's do margin 10 pixels, width 25, height 25, and let's do border 2 pick solid black. All right, there we go. We got our closed boxes now. All right. So let's say that when we style, let's go parent once more. Then when we click these buttons, we want these little boxes to disappear. Look, it works, right? Totally fine. And when we click the containers themselves, we want the background color to change. Ooh. Oh, there's one. All right, make sense? Okay. Now, and I kind of even messed myself up a little bit. Let's go, instead of aqua, let's do, someone want to give me, let's do Dodger Blue, of course. All right, so we have those two things, right, working, right? We have a click handler on the close button, and we have a click handler on the container itself. So what's going to happen when I click this close button right here? Who's got any guesses what happens? At least I didn't even see your color up there, but what's going to change in Dodger Blue? It will change. So I mean, which one of these is going to take effect? Right? We have a click handler happening on a for each. We have a click handler happening on the container. Container will change. All right, let's check it out. That's very that did not work the way I thought it was going to work. Man, yeah, event propagation is tricky. Let's go do it again. So we have our parent node style display equals none. The click should have propagated all the way up. Or maybe it's going down. This isn't bubbling. No, this is the opposite of bubbling right now. So, please, what was your color? Black. Oh man, that's a tough one. All right, let's go with it. All right, I did notice one thing that happened. Okay, and this is kind of the bubbling thing here. Is I'm going to click on this div here, right? And all of a sudden that div or that H2 turned black. And why did that turn black? Anyone have any ideas of why that turned black? Exactly. So this click handler is it's for every single part of this container, right? And when I click on one of its children, and this, if I took this out, that would turn black as well. It all turned black. And you're like, well, I only wanted the main thing to turn black, right? And this is what's known as propagation or bubbling, right? In that on our main container here, the click handler is for every single item on it, okay? And so we have to figure out a way to, let's go change that again to just blue. We've got to figure out a way to make sure that it only happens on the items we want it to happen to. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do another 15 minutes on event propagation. I realized we went over break time here, and then I'll let you get to your project tonight. All right, let's be back at 50 after. All right. So we call the stop propagation on it. Okay. I'm recording now. All of this is in your training kit as well. All of it. All right. So when I call stop propagation, it is going to stop that chain event from happening. Prevent default is something different. We'll go over that in just a minute. Stop propagation will stop that chain from happening. So now my items, that my elements have their intended purposes. Without stop propagation, once more, it's going to bubble all the way up through the parent, right? Oh, that went farther. With stop propagation, it will stop the bubble from happening. So just know that. And once more, I'll draw my amazing drawings. This is the body, the main parent container, that smaller div, and our span. When we click on it, there's going to be a wall here. It is not going to let that click handler go farther up, okay? The wall does not let the click handler continue. It just stops where it is. So it only is on that one item. And the funny thing is if you don't have stop propagation on one and you do on another, it'll stop there, okay? But just know that that exists. No, it just has to be in. So someone asked, does stop propagation have to come before the event change? No, it just has to be in the handler. It has to be in whatever your callback, okay? And then it'll be like, okay, stop propagation here. I'm not gonna let it go any farther. It just has to be in the callback. It doesn't have to be in any specific place in the callback. Nope. You can pass as many arguments as you want to stop propagation, but it's going to ignore them. Angela, that'd be a little bit more advanced and outside of the scope of this lesson, but you could do it. Any other questions on this right now? There is something called, and this is so stop propagation prevents bubbling from happening. There is something called it's event.prevent default. And prevent default is useful for buttons and forms, okay? So buttons and forms have default functionality. If I wrote a button on here or a form, let's go form, and then button type is submit. Click me. It actually, you saw that flash? It actually refreshes the page, okay? Now if I grab my button, and did a remember I said it's E, pretty common. So I'd say prevent default on it. Now it no longer flashes, it no longer refreshes the page. And I can add different functionality to it. So that's what the prevent default is about. It prevents the default behavior. We're going to use stop propagation much more, but the two do get confused. They do get confused with each other. So just remember, prevent default is only for form items. All right. Stop propagations prevents event bubbling. Okay, and all of this is on your training kit. I know that we screwed up the video tonight a little bit, but all this is on the training kit. Okay, and now things are going to work like the way we want them to work. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Anyways, oh, because I didn't click the actual button. How to make the entire container close? Sure, we can. How would you make the entire container close, Ryan? If we wanted to do it in the closed container handler. I would do it like this. I just went parent node, parent node. Yep. So the parent node is going to be that smaller div, and the parent node of that is going to be the container, right? So this is the span that got clicked on. This is the parent. This is the parent node, and this is its parent node. Cool. I don't want you to get too hung up on the propagation of the event bubbling. It's one of those things that obviously you saw me mess it up, right? It's difficult. If you don't use it every single day, kind of lose it a little bit. But it's important to know that it happens and why it happens and why maybe another event is being triggered when you click on a button. You're like, why is this other event being triggered? That's because of bubbling, all right? So just know that it exists and know how to prevent it. How do you how do you prevent event bubbling? What's the method you prevent event bubbling with? Stop propagation on the event. The prevent default is only on form items, okay? No, you will absolutely, Jorge, you will, this still exists no matter what, if event is there or not, okay? Oh, I saw propagation. It still exists, even though event's not there, right? So you still have to stop propagation. And that's really wild that it gave it to me without even calling it. Huh, that's crazy. Benki, there is no relation between CSS and JavaScript, period. That's it. CSS and JavaScript do not talk to each other. They do not affect each other. We can use inline styles with JavaScript, but we cannot affect CSS. They refuse to talk to each other. They got in a big fight a couple years ago, and they won't talk to each other anymore. We can add classes to elements, and the HTML elements will talk to the CSS. Nope, not less either. If you have SS at the end of your name, JavaScript won't talk to you. CSS less, Sass None of them. Just know that it's not CSS that it's affecting. It's the inline style. All right. This takes some working with and getting used to. And that's what you're going to do tonight and tomorrow. Yeah, you're right, Ryan. In the DOM, I should say. JavaScript in the DOM, because that's JavaScript in Node. And JavaScript in Node is a little more open-minded. But in the DOM. This is our assignment tonight. And funny you say that, because you are going to have to play around with a little bit of less, but not for much. Your real tasks are going to lie in this right here. You're going to create 10 unique event listeners. Using your creativity, make the Fun Bus site more interactive. So here's some examples. And you're more than welcome to go in and use any event listener you want. Create 10 of them. Okay? That's it. And stop navigation items from refreshing the page by using prevent default. So the nav items and the anchor tags will be able to use prevent default on as well. So what is the default? What is the default functionality of an anchor tag? Anyone? No one? Maybe is my. Oh, there we go. Yeah, my phone was just behind. Reload. Yeah, close. Open a new window. No, not open a new window, but go to a new page, right? So that's what an anchor tag does. So if you do prevent default on an anchor tag, on click, it won't do that, right? So that's pretty cool. So you'll go through and do all this. Create 10 unique event listeners. And a stretch task here is to look at GreenSock, which is amazing, animation library, and play around with animations in your custom events. Remember, stretch assignments are stretch, and so you don't have to finish it or do it at all. It's just more about going out and learning on your own. All right, everyone. Let me throw this into Slack for you. Take a quick break, come back, and work on this for the rest of the evening. You're also going to work on this tomorrow, and this is what you will present in your stand-ups tomorrow. I will link the code pen as well. Here we go. Save it. And play around with the code pen first, too. I mean, either one, if you want to go play around with the code pen, you can, just to start getting events working. But other than that, have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much, and we'll see you tomorrow. Well, continue working on it tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right. Have a good night, everyone.